Americans might know better. College students do not know better. There's a new poll out. This is from NBC News Generation Labs. Surveyed more than 1,000 sophomore college students. Survey revealed almost 2/3 of college Democrats would not room with a Trump supporter. 62% said they probably would not or definitely would not room with someone who supported Trump in 2020. What's the number for Republicans? Less than half of that. Only 28% of college Republicans say they would refuse to room with a Dem, someone who voted for Biden in 2020. What's the reasoning here? Well, here's what the Dem said. They interviewed some of the people who participated in the survey. Democrat kid says, quote, I could never live with someone who supported a racist, homophobic, xenophobic, and sexist person. I could possibly room with somebody who is a Republican. But when it comes down to it, Donald Trump is not the average Republican candidate. So this kid is saying that same thing that all of the extremely closed-minded liberals who want to seem open-minded, because that's one of the values that they pretend to appreciate. What they say is, look, I'm open-minded. I could be friends with a Republican. Just not a Republican who ever supports any winning candidate. But if you support, I don't know, Liz Cheney or something, then, okay, then maybe if you're a Liz Cheney, Mitt Romney Republican, I'll still probably hate your guts, but maybe I'll talk to you. So they interview the Republican kid. Republican kid says, hold on, I'm gonna do my sort of nice, moderate, wants to sound kind of acceptable college Republican. A person's political views do not affect whether or not I would have a friendship or relationship with them. Many of my friends have vastly different political views than I do, but I do not let that affect our friendship. And I don't mean to make fun of this hypothetical kid, because that's the nicer thing to say. That's the more reasonable thing to say. Of course, you should, if you get assigned, you got a Democrat in your dorm or whatever, you should be able to get along. We're all Americans, right? Well, actually, on college campuses, there are a ton of foreigners. But we're talking about people here who voted in 2020. Well, I guess some foreigners probably voted in 2020. But in any case, let's say, for the sake of argument, we're all Americans. We should be able to get along, even people who voted for the other party. On the surface, this is crazy. On the surface here, the Republicans got it right, Democrats got it wrong. However, though it is crazy to refuse to room in college for a year or two with someone who has different political views, it is normal to prefer to live with people who have a similar general view of the world that you do. That is normal. The lib here is, in a very crazy, extreme, backwards way, actually articulating a pretty reasonable concept, which is unity is our strength. That's really what they're saying. Even though the libs love to say diversity is our strength, no one actually believes that. Unity is our strength. Doesn't mean you can't include people of different backgrounds. It's not a racial thing. It's not a sexual thing. It's not a whatever, it's not a, I don't know, geographic thing. But you want to have more in common with the people that you spend your time with than less. Of course you do. That's what makes a community, is things in common. So yeah, actually the Democrat here, in a kind of bizarro way, is espousing a more normal point of view. You don't want just total uniformity, but you want to share some basic premises with people. And that can lead to much more fruitful conversation. If you get a bunch of people in the room who don't share any basic premises at all, let's say you get a bunch of people in the room and they don't even speak the same language, are you going to have a fruitful conversation? No. If you get a bunch of people in the room who agree on basic stuff, what life is, kind of, what the purpose of society is, kind of, really basic aspects of human nature, you are much more likely to have a fruitful conversation and learn from one another. The Democrats get that. The Democrats who preach that we need all sorts of diversity and nothing in common and no standards whatsoever, in practice, what they say is, no, you all have to agree with us. We need to have some things held in common. And ironically, that's a very conservative point of view. The conservatives used to know that before the conservatives bought the BS from the Dems, hook, line, and sinker back in the 60s, when the Democrats upended all the standards and norms and traditions. There's actually something to learn here. The Republicans have to be willing to room with Democrats because there are only like 7 Republicans on any college campus. And the Democrats have the political advantage of being able to ostracize and exclude people because they are the vast majority, 90% plus of college campuses. But maybe we can learn something from them. Maybe actually we need to be a little more muscular in setting standards and norms of behavior and saying, no, we're not going to allow your crazy BS to come in and destroy our society. Speaking of ostracism of conservatives on campus, there's a very nice piece published by FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education. And it was on this hubbub that occurred with little old me, whom everybody loves, at the University of St. Thomas some months ago. Apparently, I had been invited to the University of St. Thomas. I actually didn't even really know very much about this invitation. And then the school, unbeknownst to me, refused to let me come speak. And the irony of it is that the University of St. Thomas is a Catholic school, and they wouldn't let me come speak because I hold Catholic views on the social issues. Abortion, transgenderism, sex, all this kind of stuff. Because I hold to Catholic teaching, they wouldn't let me on campus because they wanted me to hold to liberal teaching. And so FIRE, the Individual Rights in Education group, has a headline, University of St. Thomas promises free speech, yet practices censorship by denying college Republicans' request to host Michael Knowles. First paragraph. The University of St. Thomas harmonizes free speech with its religious mission, laudably promising to give its full blessing to students' expressive rights as part of its Catholic identity. Yet, when the university's College Republicans chapter sought to make good on the promise by requesting to host political commentator Michael Knowles, St. Thomas rejected the request because administrators didn't like his views, thereby betraying the school's commitment to free speech by violating the group's right to host conservative speakers. In FIRE's June 28th letter to St. Thomas, we explained how the university's viewpoint-based rejection of Knowles violates students' expressive rights to host sinful, satanic, or even blasphemous speakers. So I want to put a pause there. I am actually grateful to FIRE for defending me and yelling at St. Thomas for rejecting me. But respectfully, that's not what happened. The school's rejection of me coming to campus did not violate students' rights to host sinful, satanic, or blasphemous speakers. Thank you very much. Gosh, with a defense like this, who needs opponents? And I see what they're trying to say. FIRE is trying to say, you have a right to say anything you want on campus. But one, no, you don't. And two, that's a very extreme libertarian view, but it's not true. You don't have a right to say whatever you want on campus. But two, the content of my speech is not sinful or satanic or blasphemous. It's the opposite, actually. The school rejected me because my speech was not sinful or satanic or blasphemous. The school rejected me because my speech was the opposite. It was a Christian speech. It was informed by Catholic principles, and the Catholic school rejected me because the Catholic school has become sinful, satanic, and blasphemous because they prefer liberalism and leftism to Christianity. The conservatives have fallen into a big, big trap here, okay? Free speech absolutism. I wrote a whole book on this, so I won't belabor the point. Free speech absolutism is not a conservative value. Academic freedom is not a conservative value. It never has been. Those were always left-wing values. The modern conservative movement began with William F. Buckley Jr. writing a book called God and Man at Yale, The Superstitions of Academic Freedom. In that book, he called academic freedom a hoax. The Catholic school has every right and frankly obligation to not allow certain ideas on campus, to tell teachers, no, you're not allowed to teach nonsense. People go to a Catholic school to get a Catholic education. All education has to have limits and has to be somewhat coercive because you've got to teach kids something. That's the point. You go into college theoretically ignorant, and then you come out and you're supposed to know certain things and have a certain view of the world and be educated, which means brought up. Now, usually what happens is the opposite. Kids go into college knowing a lot of stuff, and then they leave more ignorant than they left. And this is actually even backed up by certain social scientific surveys. But it's also backed up by common sense. We all know that happens. So, no, you can't teach everything. You can't have a school that teaches at the same time 2 + 2 = 4 and 2 + 2 = 5. You can't at the same time have a school teach that good stuff is good and also that good stuff is evil. You can't have those two things. You've got to pick. You've got to have limits here. So I appreciate the defense from FIRE. I really do. Tactically, I'm really glad they're defending me. But the reasoning that they're using here is not correct. I'm glad you like that clip. Now, you know, we hit 1 million subscribers. I'm so pleased. I'm really thrilled about the 1 million subscribers. I get the nice gold play button. It's very, very cool. You've got to head on over, though, and ring this bell and get the notifications and subscribe, because I want to hit 1 billion subscribers. So do it now. Thank you. See you next time.